Southwest Topeka has a good neighbor. State Farm agent Jim Garrison, now at 29th and Urish. If your current insurance situation has you going around in circles, get off the roundabout and stop in and meet Jim and his wonderfully efficient staff. Let Jim Garrison give you a quote and make the Garrison comparison. He's confident that with State Farm's competitive rates, the right coverage, and his unmatched service, you'll want to make him your new insurance agent. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and Jim Garrison is there for you, northeast of the roundabout at 29th and Urish.
When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
It's time for Real Estate 101 with the Carrie Brown team from Preferred Advisors.
Good Saturday morning to you. This is Carrie Brown, Associate Broker with eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. I have a great guest this morning. His name is Bill Exeter, and he is with the Exeter Group. He specializes in 1031 exchanges, and we're going to be talking in pretty good detail about what that means and how that can help you if you are trying to set up your estate so that you pay less money to the government, or, kind of clean things up a little bit. First and foremost, I have a seller that is going to be closing on their house, and we are struggling to find what they're looking for. So if you have thought about selling and you have a home that sits on about 15 acres roughly, if it has a pond, that would be great. We have a budget of up to about $350, and we would like to be within 30 minutes of the energy plant in St. Mary's. So if you have that, please give me a call at 785-213-5188. We would love to take a look at it and see if we can also help you find a new home. And we also have the winery, Crooked Post Winery. They are selling. They obviously would love to have someone that still allows them to be involved, if at all possible. They don't want to be overly involved, but they will train you for a year. They have a great setup. All the equipment is going to stay. They're very, very meticulous at how they care for their items, so all their equipment. So definitely want to check that out if you've got any questions about it. If you've ever thought about owning a winery, it's a great location. Again, give me a call, 785-213-5188. So today we're going to be talking to Bill and what a 1031 exchange is. It's kind of funny whenever we're doing paperwork and we ask clients, did you purchase this home with a 1031 exchange? And you always know that they didn't whenever they get this blank look and they're like, I don't even know what that is. So today we're going to explain what that is and how it can impact you and help you overall financially. Thank you so much for joining me, Bill. I would love for people to know about you. So if you would, let's start off with that. Tell us all about you.
Sure. Okay, sounds good. I've actually been in the fiduciary services and 1031 exchange services now for 36 years. And it's funny how you get into that by accident sometimes. Nobody ever goes into college and go, I'm going to be a 1031 guy or what have you, but it just kind of happens. So you look back going, wow, that's not exactly what I had planned. But actually got my degree in accounting and have a lot of experience in accounting, tax, and finance, and was controller of a bank, and the chairman of the board had said, let's start an exchange company. And outside counsel said, well, let's not have the escrow subsidiary run that. We think that's a potential issue. Of course, this is way back before the IRS had even issued regulations, so we were kind of all in uncharted territory. And so they threw the 1031 exchange thing at me. I had no idea what that was, and then about 2.5 months later, UCLA had a 2-3 day extension course on 1031 exchanges. So that's kind of where I came from with accounting, tax, and finance, and got into being controller of the bank, and then my career kind of that left turn. I got into 1031 exchanges, trust services, and what have you, and it's kind of one of those things where you shake your head and go, what just happened? And that was 36 years ago, so I haven't looked back since. It's been a lot of fun doing that. So I've been doing exchanges trust services, fiduciary type work for 36 years. And that's how we got here today. The current company, Sitter Group, we started in 2004. We just wanted to be able to expand into areas that a lot of the traditional or larger qualified intermediaries or trust companies wouldn't touch, because clients who are in real estate need, specialized help and services and problem solving that a lot of the other guys aren't permitted to do because they're publicly traded or something like that. So we decided to launch our company so we could do what's right and what's needed for the client.
So I was telling Bill before we got started, we know that 1031 exchanges could easily slip into that, oh, wow, we just dropped all of our audience. So I just recently heard Bill talking at an NCE conference, which we've talked about on the show before. That's the National Council of Exchangers. And Bill is really upbeat, and he kept my interest, and that's hard to do. So I thought, man, if there's going to be somebody that can explain this, it's going to be Bill. So going into that, why would somebody need a 1031 exchange?
Well, it's a good question, and it obviously depends on the client and what their situation is. But in most cases, probably a basic example would give or tell the story. So in a lot of cases, you'll see somebody who gets into rental property by accident. Maybe they owned a house and they had to relocate, so they decided to keep it and start renting it out. And then 3, 4, 5 years later, they think, I kind of like this, and I want to get into a duplex or fourplex or what have you, and trade up. And then, of course, they meet with their accountant and they find out what the shock value is of paying taxes and how much they're going to have to write the checks for. And that's always a scary thing. And so that's where you look at the 1031 exchange and say, okay, I want to sell the single family and I want to reinvest in other rental or investment or business use properties, but I don't want to get killed with those taxes. And by doing the 1031 exchange, you can sell that, reinvest, and defer all of those, the capital gain tax, the depreciation recapture tax. Most states, the only state that does not recognize 1031 exchanges is Pennsylvania. All the other states would actually allow you to defer the tax as well, and it avoids the Medicare surcharge, or what people call the Obamacare tax, so the 3.8% tax on that. So it's all about selling property, reinvesting, not paying the tax as long as you're remaining fully invested. That's really the key. It's more of a economic stimulus package than anything else. And it's really designed to keep your money in your pocket so you can trade up in value, buy more units, increase your cash flow, and ultimately your net worth.
And that, folks, is why you need a 1031 exchange. See, that was not so bad. Okay, so there are multiple kinds of 1031 exchanges. Can you break them down?
Sure. In fact, 97% use what we call a forward 1031 exchange. In our business, it's 97% of our volume. And that means that they are selling their current property first, and whatever it is, whether it's single family or what have you. And then they're going through the 1031 exchange and reinvesting second. There's a reverse 1031 exchange, and that's the opposite. That's where you can actually go out, take all the time you want, find the right property, do your due diligence, make sure it meets all of your goals and objectives, etc. And then you actually buy and close on your new replacement property first, and then you have the time frame after that to market and sell your current property. So you're really buying first, selling second. And the third category is what we call an improvement or build-to-suit 1031 exchange. You don't see a whole lot of these today because of the time constraints, but it allows you to sell your current property, and you use some of the net proceeds to buy other replacement property, other rental, investment, or business use property, but you've got proceeds left over, and you use those excess proceeds to build or improve or retrofit the property that you've just acquired. And that's a little tough in today's world with all the deadlines that they're subjected to.
So, what would you say, let's just say you're just getting started and you need to get a 1031 exchange. What is the process?
Good question. The most important thing is that the 1031 exchange be in place before you close on any of your transactions, any of your sales or purchases. But I think going back before that, the most important thing is to have your team in place. And so you want to really meet with your team, which should include, your tax advisor and your legal advisor. The tax advisor in this case is probably the most important because you need to know what your pain is going to be, if you will. Whether the tax is going to be. If you sell and just cash out, how much would you write a check for? And that would help you understand whether it makes sense to do a 1031 exchange or not. So that's kind of the first step. But once you get past that and say, yes, my decision is I need to do a 1031 exchange, I do not want to have to write these checks, then at that point you would retain a qualified intermediary, and some folks will call them an accommodator or a facilitator, and then they'll draft all the documents to get the 1031 exchange set up and in place. But it's got to be done before closing. Unfortunately, we get calls every week where people say, well, I closed last week or last month, and I just found out about a 1031 exchange, or I just decided to do a 1031 exchange. And at that point, it's too late. When the closing occurs, even if you tell them, don't give me the money, I'm probably going to do a 1031 exchange, the problem is it closed, and you have the right to the money. So at that point, there's no way to go back and fix that. So you really need to make sure the 1031 is in place before closing. And once the closing occurs, the funds are wired to the qualified intermediary, and then from there, you just proceed and execute your 1031 exchange.
So are there specific properties or items that can stay inside of a 1031 exchange?
Yeah, good question. That's one of the areas where there's the most misinformation out there, most confusion out there. It's what we call qualified use and like-kind property. And it's amazing how much information is out there in classes and curriculum and websites and what have you that really confuses folks. And we get calls all the time where people say, well, I talked to 3 or 4 people, and I got 3 or 4 different answers, and I'm so confused. What really counts? So to kind of break it down, the qualified use is probably the most important part. And the qualified use means that whatever you're selling and whatever you're buying has to be held for some type of rental, investment, or business use. So rental means you're renting or leasing the property out to somebody and you're getting cash flow. It does not have to produce cash flow. So you could buy dirt, just vacant land, and hold it for capital appreciation. You could buy a condo and not rent it out and hold it for appreciation. So as long as it falls into one of those rental, investment, or business use categories, it'll qualify for 1031 exchange treatment. And the second is like-kind property, and really anything that you're selling, if it's real estate, you have to buy real estate. And that's all it means. It's just you have to exchange real estate for real estate. So when folks tell you sold a condo, you have to buy a condo, not true. If they say, you sold an apartment complex, you have to buy an apartment complex, not true. It only means you've sold something that is considered real estate. You have to buy something that's considered real estate. And that includes things you wouldn't think of, like air rights, water rights, mineral rights, oil and gas interests, fractional ownership interests like Delaware statutory trusts. So it's a pretty broad definition of what you can reinvest in, as long as it's some type of rental, investment, or business use.
So how much of that money, so say you do sell, how much of that money has to be reinvested back into that 1031?
Really everything. There's a lot of misinformation out there on that topic as well. A lot of investors will think that you have to just reinvest your cash flow, your equity, your gain, your something along that line. And really, it's not. That's just part of the equation. So let's say you sell an asset for $1 million. That's your gross sale price. You can subtract a couple things like your closing costs. So your net sale price would be something like $950 to $980 probably, and that's the magic number. That's what you have to invest, so you can buy one or more properties of equal or greater value. As long as you're trading equal or up, you've met that reinvestment requirement. So the government's kind of telling you, you've got this asset, it's worth $1 million, and as long as you stay fully invested at that level, we're going to let you defer the taxes. And then the second equation is the cash, and that kind of goes to your question, which is all of the cash needs to be reinvested. So the equity that comes out of the sale has to be reinvested in the one or multiple properties that you acquire, and you can allocate that cash however you want, as long as it all gets reinvested. Contrary to what some of the articles and content out there say, you can pull cash out and you can trade down in value. However, it will be taxable. There's no way to pull cash out through the 1031 exchange without incurring taxes, and that's the painful part. But, a lot of people are, the old adage, people are real estate rich and cash poor, so sometimes it makes sense to pull some cash out, pay the tax, and just create a liquidity event. So maybe you pull $50,000 out and just pocket it in your savings account or something. You would only pay tax on what you pull out. The rest is still tax deferred. So it doesn't hurt the 1031 exchange, just means you're going to pull a little cash out or trade down in value and pay some tax.
And now we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more about how all that works, what the deadlines are, and we'll be back for some more.
It's the season for brand new mulch, and Brown's Tree Service has got your yard covered. Brown's Tree Service utilizes hardwood mulch that retains more moisture. Not only does mulch make your yard more appealing, it also reduces weeds, improves soil, and creates insulation for plants. Get the right mulch for your job at Brown's Tree Service. They shred it, haul it, and spread it in bulk. Or you can haul it yourself for the personal touch to your property. Call Brown's Tree Service at 785-379-9212 or visit online at brownstreeservicelc.com.
When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
At SportsMomsUnited.com, we celebrate every athlete and support every sports mom. SportsMomsUnited.com is on a mission to put logic back in youth sports. When you ask young athletes why they play sports, their number one answer is fun. For them, that means being on a team, making new friends, having a good time, all of which are awesome memories. We add to the memories by featuring an athlete of the day and sharing their story. Nominate an athlete today at www.sportsmomsunited.com.
Thanks for joining us again. This is Carrie Brown, Associate Broker with eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team, and you're listening to Real Estate 101. I am back with Bill Exeter with the Exeter Group. So before the break, we broke it all down. What is a 1031 exchange? And so now we've talked about whenever you decide to liquidate something inside of that exchange. So let's talk about how much time you have to put that money back somewhere.
Okay, and that's probably the most challenging or maybe most stressful part of the 1031 exchange process. Once your sale closes, let's say it closes today, tomorrow is considered day number one, and you've got exactly 45 calendar days to identify what you're going to acquire. That's the tough part because that, as you know, that flies very quickly. Really, if you break it down, that's 6 weekends, so it doesn't give you a whole lot of time to shop for property. So you certainly want to start looking for replacement property before you close on the sale. So the farther you can get along in finding the property and identifying it under contract, et cetera, the safer it is. And then after the 45 days to identify the replacement property you're going to acquire, you have an additional 135 days to complete the exchange, which means close on the purchase and actually get title to the property. So it's a total of 180 days, 45 to identify, additional 135 days to actually complete the transaction. And it's really all about planning. Those who really sit down, plan out the timelines, look for property in advance, you're going to have a successful 1031 exchange. Those who sell and close and then start looking when they get into the 45-day period are going to find that they've created a lot of stress for themselves.
Correct. Okay, so in the NCE world, which is the National Council of Exchangers, whenever we take property or paper or whatever, and we're trying to trade that out for our clients, let's talk about that. So I know that I've got an investor that's been offered paper multiple times, and that would be land or a note that is owed. So there would be actually owners of a note. Explain how that would work inside of a 1031 exchange if you're exchanging property for paper.
Okay, and that gets a little complicated, so I'll do my best to explain it, and then you guys can always call back later if you have questions or something. When you're selling property, you may receive cash, you may receive a seller carryback note, you may receive other property. There's all sorts of things you might receive as part of the payment for that property, and it's important to know that all of that, whatever you receive, is considered proceeds or consideration toward the sale of your property. And we need to look at all of that in terms of how we defer, complete the 1031 exchange and defer the taxes. So on a simple level, let's just assume you've sold the property and the buyer says, hey, I'll give you 20% down if you'll carry an 80% note. Then that note would be drafted in the qualified intermediary's name. So the qualified intermediary really ends up holding 20% cash and 80% in the form of a promissory note or a seller carryback note inside the 1031 exchange. And that's the easy part. So now you've sold and we're holding cash and we've got a note. The more complicated part is now you have to go buy replacement property, and how do you do that when you're holding just cash and a note? So, of course, the cash is easy. So then you find, well, I guess I should back up. You just have really three choices or options when that situation occurs. So the first would be, do you, as the person doing the 1031 exchange, have cash in your pocket that you can put in equal to the value of the note? So if it's let's say a $300,000 seller carryback note, you'd have to put $300,000 cash into your 1031 exchange. People refer to that as buying the note out of your own 1031 exchange. It's not really buying the note, but that's probably a good way to describe it. And then you'd have all cash in the exchange to move forward. So that's an option. The second option would be to sell the note and the problem is in a lot of cases, if you sell the note, whoever you sell it to is probably going to want a pretty significant discount so they get a good rate of return. So that can get a little costly. You could certainly sell it to a related party, so if somebody could buy it out of your exchange account at par, that would be fantastic. The third option is to ask the seller of your new replacement property if they would take that note as part of the consideration or payment toward their property that you're buying from them. And if they say yes, then we as the qualified intermediary would just endorse the note and sign the mortgage or deed of trust over to them as part of the payment plus the cash. So those are kind of your three options. So it can be done, especially with you guys and the members of the NCE that understand that and are more creative. They can certainly accomplish that.
It is actually, and I've talked about it before, it is a lot of fun to learn for me, and that says a lot about me, I guess, watching how all of that breaks down. It's definitely way outside of the normal put a house on the market and it sells. So I think it's a lot of fun. But
yep.
So obviously
it could be go a long way too to problem solve as well. I mean, a lot of times sellers are backed into a corner for some reason, and that could be a great solution sometimes.
Absolutely. You would be surprised at just how creative it gets. I love it. So let's talk about how to pick the person like you. How would you go about that process? And first off, do you service Kansas?
We do, absolutely. We cover all 50 states, so certainly we've done a lot of exchanges in Kansas. We're also one of the few exchange companies that actually can handle foreign property. So for those who have rental, investment, or business use in a foreign country, let's say it's a rental flat in London, you can exchange that for any other rental property, but it has to be foreign for foreign. So it doesn't matter where the property is located, we can take care of it for you. I think the scariest thing about our industry is that over 99% of the qualified intermediaries out there are not licensed or regulated or bonded, or they have no government oversight. And it's not because of them, it's because our industry has no ability to be licensed or regulated. And I'm one of the founders of the Industry Trade Group. We have asked all sorts of federal and state agencies over the years to come in and regulate us. And they've always said the same thing, that our industry doesn't have a loss ratio high enough to justify regulations. They've always turned us down. So, there's less than 1% of qualified intermediaries have any kind of regulatory oversight because they've actually gone out and become regulated some other way. And that's exactly what we did. A couple of years ago, we decided to go down the regulatory approval process and become licensed, regulated, and audited by the Wyoming Division of Banking. So we actually started our own trust company, and that means that the clients' funds are held in dual signature, separate, segregated, qualified trust accounts. And that's critical in protecting the funds, so they're clearly delineated as fiduciary funds, not corporate funds. So I think the first step is looking at qualified intermediaries that have some kind of regulation or oversight. You just want somebody looking to make sure that they're operating in a safe and sound manner. And that's really the key there. And the next is you look at something as in bonding or insurance. So you really want somebody who is got fidelity bond coverage, errors and omissions insurance coverage, a financial institution bond or package, which means that they're insured in case there's embezzlement of funds, any type of theft of funds. They're insured if the qualified intermediary makes a mistake. Errors and omissions, that's probably the most frequent issue where it's just a mistake and it causes a loss. So you want to make sure you're covered for that as well. And then you want to make sure that all of your funds are always held in a qualified trust or a qualified escrow account. That's critical. So we're set up to meet all of those. We've looked at that and complied with all of that years and years ago.
So obviously that means that someone's really got to entrust, and just have that level of trust with the person doing this for them. And with that, there should be, ideally, you should educate yourself to some degree. How would they go about doing that so that they say they didn't choose you and they're taking that leap of faith? How would they know if something's happening that should not be happening?
A good question. Unfortunately, when something goes wrong, usually by the time you're aware of it, it's probably too late or very close to too late. But you want to pay attention to signs. So, first thing is do your homework. You can Google search things like how to choose a qualified intermediary or something like that, and you'll get different checklists that pop up. So it'll help you with questions that you should be asking. Check things. So if they tell you, yes, we're set up in Kansas, check with the Secretary of State and make sure that they are set up and legally exist and they're in good standing. If they make other claims, ask them where they put their funds. If they hold the funds with a certain bank, you can always call the bank and verify that they have a relationship. So things like that. Then as you're in the middle of the 1031 exchange, watch for signs. If you have a hard time getting a hold of them, a lot of times when problems are beginning to occur, all of a sudden they start to go radio silent, or it's very difficult to get a hold of them. Unfortunately, at that point, they're already holding your funds, so it's in a lot of cases, there's not a whole lot you can do, but you can try to get your exchange closed as quickly as possible. And don't be afraid to reach out to the industry and talk to people to see if they know of anything that's going on. Absolutely.
So, how would they get a hold of you if they would like to employ your services?
Good question. You could call our general office phone number, which is our headquarters office in San Diego, and just ask for Bill. I'm the only Bill in the company. The phone number is 619-239-3091. Again, that's 619-239-3091. Or you can go to our website, exeterco.com. So that's EXETERCO.com.
And I will have that information on our Facebook page, which is Preferred Advisors Team. So if you search for that, you'll see our EXP logo and the Preferred Advisors Team. I will have the shows loaded, but I will also be loading the link to several of Bill's guides that, as Bill was telling me, is always accurate. So they update it several times a year. And you'll be able to click on that link and find all the breakdowns of what we're talking about throughout this month. And basically just to help you get educated and find a way to keep more of your money. So if you're looking to buy or sell, be sure and give us a call at 785-213-5188. Our website does have a link to where you can actually set up your own searches, and it's it's www.preferredadvisorsteam.com. You can set up your own searches. You can save everything you want, and that covers all of Northeast Kansas and now a fair amount of Ohio. So you can go in there, check it out, and save what you're looking for. We'd be happy to help you buy a home. So 785-213-5188. And thank you so much, Bill, for being my co-host for the month. We'll be talking more next week.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Real Estate 101 with the Carrie Brown team from Preferred Advisors.